Hi guys, welcome to Parawomenradio. I'm Amy. So welcome to day 3 of Livemas, where we go live each day leading up to Christmas. Today we have Suitcase Sarah on the docket. The Florida woman who zipped her boyfriend Jorge Torres up into a suitcase and passed out just got life in prison. She was offered a 14-year plea deal, but Sarah wanted her day in court, and well, woohoo! Congratulations, Sarah. You won life in prison. Woo! Idiot. So I'm going to roll some credits while we wait for the rest of the replay crew to roll in. Special shout out to my dragonflies. Hope you're doing well, my love. Be sure to give this live a thumbs up. Helps me go out into the algorithm party out there. Bring more people back to the party. It's just a free way to help me out. Today we are going to be talking about Suitcase Sarah. Do you think this is the last we're going to hear from Sarah? I think that her 5 minutes of fame might just about be up. I wanted to show you that we have been covering the Sarah Boone case for well over a year now. There is a playlist, Suitcase Trial Sarah Boone. I think there's like 30 or so videos in there. We've got some interesting ones. The ones that I think are a little bit more interesting, they had a news crew go into Sarah Boone's old apartment. They had a news crew go out and interview Sarah's neighbors. There were a few videos of us reading Sarah Boone's letters. So I will put the playlist, everything that we view during this live, I will put down in the show notes for YouTube. And we often will talk over things or just flash something up on the screen. But I will put the link for everything in the show notes. And this is for fair play use. And it's also for you, because I know sometimes you want to just be able to look at something without somebody talking over it. But just for a little refresher, this is Sarah Boone, and this is what she did.
Sarah. For everything you've done to me. Sarah. For everything you've done to me. Sarah. You. Sarah. You. Sarah. Stupid. Sarah. That's my name. Don't wear it up. Sarah. I can't breathe, babe. Seriously. Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me. Sarah.
So that's what Miss Blame Boone, she coined herself that, Blame Boone. We like to call her Sarah Boone's Farm or Suitcase Sarah over here. But that was her. She somehow talked this guy into getting into this suitcase. She zipped him up and proceeded to push him down a staircase and sit on the couch and mock him. And then she went upstairs and passed out. And woke up the next day, and only one person woke up the next day, and it wasn't her boyfriend. So that's what Sarah did. Sarah was offered 14 years with time served, which so that would have meant she probably would have only had to serve about 8 more years after her trial. Or after this was all said and done. But no, Sarah wanted her day in court. Sarah demanded her day in court, and Sarah got her day in court, and Sarah got life in prison. So I thought we would go over, yesterday was when it all happened. We'll go over what some doctors, psychologists have to say about it. There was a lawyer that had somebody in the courtroom. We're going to go over what they have to say. And then finally, we're going to look at Sarah's I don't know. What do you call it? Her thing where she says that she forgives George. We're also going to take a look at some of the victim impact statements. Dr. G explains. This is Sarah Boone sentenced to life, behavior and body language.
Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert. And today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of Sarah Boone. Sarah Boone was recently found guilty for the murder of George Torres after locking him in a suitcase. What we're going to be looking at today is her sentencing. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. So where we're going to start today is right before the victim impact statements by George Torres' daughter. She's going to be coming in virtually. Let's watch how her body posture changes.
With Mr. Owens, given the fact that the victim.
So if you look right here, you can see that her attorney is sitting close to the table. She's sitting up straight, fairly close to the table as well.
His daughter is having difficulties with.
And then you
It
hear.
looked like she was even shaking out her shoulders there. I also have a little bird playing with his toy really nearby. So if you hear some sound, that's him. I'm trying to mute the mic, but then I forget I have the mic mute and then I talk with the mic muted. And so the joys of having a little bird.
George Torres' daughter is starting to come in. You see how much distance she's creating. When the victim impact statements are being said, she's scooting back. She's creating emotional distance. Now, she actually does this for people that are on her side as well, but she is creating emotional distance between what's being said and her body language. She's scooting back. We oftentimes see this in interrogations. We see this very frequently during victim impact statements. So what you're seeing is her disconnecting.
Is that her, Ana Victoria Torres?
Because I would have thought it was more like her bracing herself. Like, here we go.
Yes, sir.
That being said, she does appear to be looking at the victim. So she is paying attention. She's just disconnected from it.
Is that it? Is that who it is? All right, ma'am, good afternoon. Can you hear us?
Now we're going to skip to the end of this victim impact statement.
Thank you.
Anything further?
No other impact statements, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any other witnesses or evidence at this point in time state?
No, Your Honor.
All right.
Now, one thing you're noticing is she basically hasn't moved. And this remains true through many of the other victim impact statements, even for.
We are going to look at some of the impact statements later on in the show. This guy is just looking at her body language.
For people that are on her side, so to speak. So if you wondered why she kept that posture, why she stayed a bit distant during people against and for her, is that it's a way of maintaining control. The less you give people, the less you express, the less they can read you, the less that they can glean from that. So it is a way to just assert control over and over again by giving people very little. Now we're going to watch Sarah Boone providing her own statement.
Sarah Boone.
Now, this is unlike a trial, so you're allowed to.
You can see her twitching her mouth back and forth a lot. We have lots of nerves in the mouth. If you've seen my videos before, you'll know I talk oftentimes about how that helps us. Manage stress. So there's probably a certain degree of stress that comes with this, probably a degree of anger, maybe some excitement that comes with providing her own statement. Probably not much in the way of anxiety. She doesn't come across that she feels very anxious about many of these things, but there probably is stress.
To speak in a narrative form, as well as I understand you have taken some.
Now, you see a quick adjustment right there. You see her scooting forward a little bit. Now, that shows that for her, she wants to be more connected in this moment. She is leaning back a little bit, creating a little bit of that distance, but she actually is scooting her chair forward. She didn't really need to scoot it forward. So that does show that she's trying to connect, that she feels like this statement is important.
A letter that you want to.
Well, of course, Sarah thinks that her statement she's about to make is important. Everything Sarah has to say is important.
From, and then you want to speak to the court after that.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and just.
Now you're seeing a lot of blinking right now. It's another part of what comes with a lot of stress. And then as soon as she started to talk, see the eyebrows raised. That means she actually wants you to pay attention to what she's saying. We oftentimes raise our eyebrows to bring attention to our face. That's what she's doing right here.
Why don't you go ahead and get started?
This is actually an edited version.
All right, so this is actually an edited version. She does put a lot of qualifiers into things. This is another way to assert control. This is not the exact statement I wanted to make. This is an edited version. She's known for writing letters. She's sent quite a few to judges. She's gone through a lot of attorneys. So her saying this is not exactly surprising. It's pretty much on brand with the other kinds of interactions she's had.
She's like, I only had about 2 weeks to prepare this letter, actually 4 years, but I only had about 2 weeks, so don't expect a lot. Here we go.
Or and there she was scooting forward again, really a way for her to try to make sure she's connecting as much as possible when she expresses all this.
I had a lot to say. I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I didn't really know how to put it on paper. And I didn't know how much I could say or how little I should say. So what I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more.
There she is reiterating again that this is edited. That's another way to maintain control.
But I would like to read.
And then she licked her lips after saying it was an edited version. Probably stresses her out. She doesn't seem to like the fact that this is an edited version.
The more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. She really is. Oh, Junie. She really is hammering it home that this was edited. Like, she didn't want to do this. This was not of her choosing. This is an edited version.
Oh.
And then she looks at the camera after this. So I know I'm pausing a lot, but she's doing a lot right now. So I want you to watch this right here.
That I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial.
Oh,
so when she said wasn't said in my actual trial, she looks at the camera because she does think about the audience at home, the audience beyond the courtroom. That's part of what she did during the trial. It seems to be something that she's still doing.
But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
There's a lot of emotion under the surface here. You can see her shaking her head when she's talking. You can see the energy starting to build up. She does not seem to like the fact that this is an abridged version of what she wanted to say. I am guessing that one of her attorneys probably said you need to keep it shorter or just talk about the important stuff or something like that. And that seems to really be bothering her because she seems to want to cover so much.
Trial. And on top of what I have on paper, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then, if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less, but...
Now, you see her chin right here. This is a defensive posture, keeping our chin low. It protects our neck, which is a very vulnerable place. And
now, I think also when I saw the court yesterday, I think... Stop it, Junie. You're going to go in the other room. I think I saw Jorge's. You? Yeah, let's go in the other room, you. All right. Hold on a second, you guys. Yep, let's go. In the other room, my friend. Come on. Come on. See how long he lets that fly. He was really quiet this morning, so I thought it was a good time to go live. But anyway, when you get a bird, it's like having a 3-year-old. A 3-year-old they can live, like some of them can live to 80 years old, but Junie's a green cheek and he can live like up to, I think, 30 or 40 years old. So I have a 3-year-old for 4 years. Okay. Anyway, I forgot where we were at here. Oh yes. Jorge's family is off to her right. So when she's looking down and off to the right there, I think she's looking right at Jorge's family.
She oftentimes sits with her chin up much higher. So this, as she's reading this, seems to be something that she feels a little bit defensive about. She feels like she needs to be in a defensive posture.
You may proceed, ma'am.
In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan.
In her wisdom, oh Lordy, and Sarah Boone believes in God. I mean, I thought Sarah Boone thought she was God.
All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by George Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se.
Okay, now
Okay, Sarah Boone did this all to herself. Sarah Boone is a piece of work, isn't she? I work so hard at being okay with this world and the things that go on, but Sarah Boone, she makes me struggle. She makes me struggle to know there are people like her out there.
let's jump back for a second here and listen how this starts, because she's talking about a list of grievances that she has, essentially.
We shine brighter and overcome the damage caused by George.
The damage caused by, and the first thing she says is
Torres, the Torres family.
And what's also amazing is that she said over and over again that this was the watered down version. This is the watered down version. Can you imagine what she really wanted to say? I mean, I don't think we need to imagine too much.
Torres and the Torres family. So what she is putting at the top of her list of what's been damaging to her, it's George Torres and his family. A pretty strong way to start your own statement.
Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived through to be so gold, but an act of grace, humility, and considerable self-compassion to be set free from sorrow.
So you can hear how much pressure is in her voice. There does seem to be a lot of intensity behind it.
And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with George Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed,
the way
pulled,
that
dragged,
she stopped and rose her eyes and looked off to the right there, I'm positive that that's where they're sitting.
whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows.
In my experience,
Because all of that stuff matters more than his life. Yeah.
these types of statements don't tend to be very effective during the sentencing phase. This was already litigated during the trial itself. So going over this in this way is probably not going to help her.
Punching holes in.
But Sarah and Boone must go over it because she feels like surely the judge will understand. I mean, the judge and I are like this, right? Surely.
The walls and doors, ramming his entire
The judge is like, don't call me Shirley.
body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over. For holding me hostage on weekends, my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of a table.
In terms of her body language right now, she's really not showing much. This is more just her reading off a narrative. You're not seeing any real emotion in her face. You mainly hear it in her voice.
As a warning not to ask anything or try to leave. For stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested. For destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called. For me experiencing ever being arrested, and after today.
Going through this once again is a way to assert control. They had a trial for this, and people made a decision based on what they heard during that trial. But she wants to relitigate it all when she has the opportunity to show that she's had growth, to show that she's learned something, and she's not taking the time to do that right now.
Prison. For causing me so much trauma and pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once. for destroying my reputation and
What? Sarah had to be hospitalized? But I mean, George isn't alive, but Sarah had to be hospitalized?
integrity for my M for murderer scarlet letter.
So she's saying that she has this scarlet letter, this M for murder scarlet letter. And in other words, saying it
That's
isn't her
because you
fault.
zip
That's
someone up
not
in
what
a
you want to
suitcase
hear
and
when you're
let 'em
preparing
die,
to
Sarah.
sentence somebody. She has to be able to accept some degree of responsibility, which we still haven't heard yet. Right now, she's just gone off a laundry list of grievances that she has about various people, particularly George Torres, obviously. But we haven't heard anything so far that suggests there's real self-reflection or anything that's been learned from this.
Talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships. Simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his
You
terrifying.
can tell what Sarah's missing in jail, and she hasn't even hit prison yet. Although I have heard, like, from people that prison is better than jail, like you get more freedoms there. But for me, it just seems like prison would be more terrifying. But I don't know.
Love. I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives and daughters. All
So her providing forgiveness to the Torres family is really wild. That the idea that she thinks that that's a good idea, or that that's what would somehow get her a lesser
It's
sentence.
wild, but it's completely Sarah Boone. Like, I mean, it wouldn't feel like a Sarah Boone letter if she hadn't thrown in a bunch of useless, needless, extra filler words along with, her being the victim. And after all that she's done to this poor Torres family, like just this little cherry on her show, on her Sunday shit show, I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less.
Assuming that was the goal here is really mind-boggling to me.
I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the time Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times.
Oh, I bet they
Another great
asked some of
contributor of my
those
goal to social.
questions. I bet they asked how and why couldn't they get him away from you, Sarah? I bet they asked that a lot. And I bet they blame themselves for a lot for it too, even though they had no control over it.
Social media with its greed, insensitivity, deception,
Watch her eyebrows right here.
asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my goal to social media with its greed, insensitivity.
So that insensitivity, there seems to be some actual anger around that. She really doesn't seem to like social media a whole lot.
Deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate. Social media has made me a pariah. It has caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially by broadcasting and manipulating my cases online. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned.
So I've heard defense attorneys use the same type of argument, the idea that social media has somehow poisoned jurors or somehow it's affected their ability to have clear judgment. I think the reality is, if you're a juror and you are in a courtroom and you sit through and listen to all the evidence, anything you've heard on social media goes away very quickly. Anything that you think if you had any preconceptions about what the trial was going to be like, it's a grave and serious matter. I genuinely do not believe that social media has any bearing or impact on the verdicts that are met in any of these trials. I genuinely believe that. I think it has no impact.
I don't think it has any impact, but I think it's something that is good for society. It's letting us see how truly corrupt the system is. And so if anything, it's helping us police the system. I think it's a great thing. And I think it was a travesty that the Delphi case wasn't televised.
Judge Cranick taking the bench. He was a little bit late. I heard some different kind of reasons for that. Late lunch. He said he was in court all morning, had to take a second to review everything, and said he reviewed the motions for new trial, the responses, the pre-sentence investigation, which was sealed, by the way. We did hear of some of what was in that. He denies very quickly her motion for new trial.
Watching this, the suitcase video is really hard because just hearing beg and knowing that what the outcome is. Ashes to Ashes says, poor Jorge, he begged so nicely and she was so mean to talk to a man like that on his dying breath. And then to top it off, to sit up in there on that stand and in her last words, say all those cruel things about his family and to his family. Oh, she's a piece of work.
Surprise there. That happens in 99% of the cases. And then we get to the victim impact statements. And the first one we're going to play a clip of is George Torres's mom. And the very beginning, she's the first victim to speak. And the very beginning of her statement I thought was really important and touching. And we'll get into all the statements, but let's listen to this.
I just want to tell Sarah Boone that I don't hate her for what she did.
I just want to tell Sarah Boone that I don't hate her for what
it's so
she
interesting that in their last statements, they're telling Sarah Boone this stuff, and then Sarah in response is saying what Sarah says. Ugh.
To me, that takes a lot of strength. And it's not like she pulled punches, right?
Forgiveness of somebody who has taken somebody who you love deeply in a violent way is something that is amazing. It's like, I know it's a gift that I'm sure they give to themselves. Well, it is a gift that they give to themselves, but it can't be easy. It can't. And then to have to forgive someone like Sarah Boone, who's quite honestly doesn't think that saying she doesn't forgive you. Like, what?
Because she talks about, we'll listen to about another minute. It was a lot of these were really short, but that was the first thing she wanted to say. I don't hate you. To me, that is genuine. That is, I don't know if I would say, she didn't say, I forgive you or use that type of language, but she's basically saying, I don't hate you. I don't, want to burn you down to the ground because of what you did, right? So that's what she was saying. She wasn't saying, let her go home or anything like that, but she wanted to make sure that, Sarah Boone, I'm going to look at you. You know what? I don't hate you. I hate what you did, but I don't hate you. And I'm highlighting this purposefully because we're going to compare it to later when somebody says, I forgive, forgiveness, faith, over and over again. And we're going to compare which one we felt was more genuine.
And I always remember that evening when that lady came into my door and she knocked at the door. She asked for my name. I said, I tell her my name. And then she said, can I come in? I said, okay, yes. And she told me to sit down. I never think that was going to be my son. And then she said my son was dead.
The genuine pain she went through. And from my perspective, the feelings of that night and what it was like and how it's a lifetime of pain and she can't sleep. She can't basically do her everyday activities. He was a son, father, uncle, brother, all of those things. And she also said, I have my family. I have my kids, some of them. I have my grandkids. Sarah Boone will never get that. That's kind of what she finished with. And then one of Victoria Torres, one of George Torres' sisters, said George Torres deserves justice. Sarah has caused a lifetime of pain. And that was kind of a common theme. She has given the Torres family and George Torres life sentences, and that's what she deserves. And then George's daughter, who had done some interviews before, I recognized her from a video we did prior. She gets on and she basically speaks on behalf of all her and her siblings. So we're going to listen to her testimony. It's about 2 minutes long.
You'd like to provide a statement to the court at this time. You may proceed.
Okay. Okay. So I'll be speaking for myself and my two siblings.
It's just amazing to me when I see his family, how much, like I think I saw, does he have a son? Because I saw a man sitting with his family, and it looked just like him. It looked like he was sitting out there. It's just amazing to me how much his kids look like him.
The murder of our father has impacted us on so many levels and in different ways. I myself, for the first year, would wake up screaming every morning or night, wishing I was having a nightmare, only to wake up to remember all over again that my father is gone. I'll never be able to hear him say he loves me ever again. To know my siblings have been affected in such a way that they are now different. They have had a piece of their heart ripped away from them, all while her son gets to hear his mother's voice and see her alive is pathetic. Because of you, Sarah, my sister is heartbroken. Because of you, Sarah, my brother is left wondering when he will ever see his father again. The loss of my father has left me with chronic depression and anxiety. Seeing any moments of fatherly love or kindness being shown between others in real life or even on TV leaves me in complete shambles. Seeking therapy was a must in order to navigate through my workday without a random breakdown. Thoughts of my father's demise still enter my mind ever so often. I'm left either angry, sad, or sick to my stomach to think of how his final moments were. George Torres, my incredible father. Not only was he my father, but my best friend. My personal comic, provided me with wisdom and knowledge, creative and loving dad, an older brother, an uncle, a cousin, a friend, a son, and above all, our father. He was human and deserved to be treated as such. My father, George Torres, was one of a kind, an absolute gem. Unfortunately, his light was dimmed on earth by evilness, but with us, we will forever make his name live on. Especially Sarah, I pray that you see his face when you see him at night.
Do you think Sarah sees his face at night? I really hope she does see his face at night. But I'm sure Sarah is so delusional, she would warp it into something else.
That is it.
Thank you. Anything?
Sorry, Mike was muted. In the courtroom as well, when she and her mom specifically spoke, it was really gripping to everybody. And again, the jurors nodding their heads. There were some other people there that, had been following the case, really nodding their heads. And to me, that was really gripping. And what was also very interesting is the judge, Judge Cranick, would very obviously be moving his head around, looking to try and look at and see Sarah Boone. What was her reaction? And from my perspective, where I was sitting, I could see her face straight on. I didn't see a lot of emotion. That's not unusual. She's obviously angry and upset because she believes she is the victim, and there's going to be more on that later, but not a lot of emotion. And specifically Judge Cranick, but also the two jurors sitting in front of me, kept looking at Sarah Boone for a reaction. And that, I think, is really important when we get to sentencing. And you're going to hear what I think of Cranick's sentencing and what maybe he had thought about before with how quick it was. Additionally, I think it's important to point out, she says her dad was human. George Torres' mom said he wasn't perfect, but he was my son. And the point is, you don't deserve this. If he committed crimes, put him in jail, right? If he was horrible to Sarah Boone, break up with him, leave him. If he steals something, put him in jail, whatever it may be, right? That's what you get. And in this perspective, his life was taken, and the jury found without the necessary actions on his side for him to deserve it. And so that's why we are where we are. Chris K said, I thought it was called the Bally Gate. There's a lot of different names for it, frankly. There's actually a lot of different names for it, some of which are inappropriate to share online that some lawyers have for it. What are you writing in? So this is like my mobile office. It's a Sprinter van, so it's like that's long. It has some chairs in it. It's got full Wi-Fi for now, as you can say. It's working. It is amazing. And if this stream works out, it opens up some opportunities. We'll see. I didn't really think that we were going to stream, by the way. This wasn't planned. Or I would have had
like I can see, it looks like he's driving in there. Okay, so let's move it forward. Actually, let's go over and look at Reddit and see what they're saying over on Reddit, and then we will end the show today watching the full Sarah Boone statement. Okay, so over on Reddit, somebody put her full transcript of her sentencing statement. So if you prefer to read it, they have it over there. And I'll put the link in the show notes. I think it's really helpful because she does do a lot of repeating herself and So sometimes for me, it helps to read the show notes. And also Sarah's family court letters they were talking about. Somebody said, I stumbled across a YouTube channel called Mo in the Deep End. She reads every family court letter from 2022. I had only heard of one with response previously. In these letters, Sarah claims to have the big C. And this is why I'm including this, because I didn't know that Sarah said she had the big C. I didn't know. Did you know? She will keep narrative going. First, Brian's lawyer, then to the judge. Does anyone remember her claiming the diagnosis to both judges in her criminal case? I don't remember. I don't remember her whispering the C word. Does anyone else? It looks like somebody replied, I just listened to these when I stumbled across it. She actually threw shade at Brian Boone for not having a job and relying on his parents' millions. I can just hear her saying that too. Unbelievable. She is not mentioning the cancer anymore. It was a big thing in the first couple letters. So Sarah Boone's even the type that will say she has cancer, is dying from cancer, when, I mean, quite obviously she's not. One more thing before we go in and look at her final statement. I did see that Sarah Boone's pen pal reveals she offered him her kidney. I thought that was interesting.
Tell the court a little bit about yourself briefly.
Well, I live in Minnesota. I currently have end-stage renal disease. Before I became disabled, I was a business owner in the Twin Cities here.
All right.
It is interesting to see the type of friendship Sarah Boone makes and the type of person that will befriend her.
How old are you?
You have to offer her, she has to offer you her kidney for you to be friends with her.
I am 50 years old.
All right. And you're considered disabled?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Is this her
and
sugar
have you
daddy?
had an occasion since this event to establish a relationship with Sarah Boone?
Yes, I have. We have been friends for the past a little over 11 months.
And how do y'all communicate?
We've communicated a lot of phone calls, lots of tablet back and forth, and a lot of letters as well. I'd say many hours of time spent with each other.
All right. And do you want to speak on her behalf here today?
I would, please.
All right. Would you please tell the court what you would like for the court to know?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Your Honor, for the privilege of speaking on behalf of my friend Sarah Boone. I also want to extend my heartfelt condolences to everyone here affected by this terrible tragedy, which has brought us all here and listening in. Many articles and videos and opinions of Sarah have gone out in the airways and on the webs. Opinions that have been formed and commented on so much that it's hard not to give into the temptation.
I feel like Sarah's sitting there like reading it with this guy in her mind because Sarah wrote this.
To treat people like a comic book or a fictional character. In the case of my friend Sarah, the words narcissist, Karen, villain, many other things, they roll off the tongue with little regard to the humanity that is dismissed so flippantly. And under a lot of circumstances, I was one of those people, as I have a love of true crime. And becoming friends with Sarah has shown me that there's a lot more depth to the people I see on the screen. I'd like to share with the world and with the court about the Sarah Boone that I know.
Sarah Boone.
Sarah Boone is
changing one life at a time.
Kind, honest, and good person. The Sarah Boone I know is one who loves animals, especially the kind who are damaged and defenseless. How many of us would take in and pour love for a hearing impaired and a sight impaired pair of dogs? She has a natural instinct to help reach out and give of herself, her time and energy and love, especially to those who are hurting or damaged. You all have seen her fight for her own life and truth here. I tell you this, she fights even harder for those she loves, giving time, attention, and companionship without a single thought for her own gain or what somebody can do for her. And one huge example is in the matter of our friendship.
This is horrible. And this is the young man that I think looks just like, this must be his son. But this is just horrible to see him saying this and then this family having what happened to them. Oh.
As I said before, I have end-stage renal disease caused by a genetic illness called polycystic kidney disease. As my life has progressed, things I have taken for granted have been taken away from me. I could not appear in court in person because I can no longer walk, as my dialysis treatments have affected the circulation of my legs and has confined me to a wheelchair. To say that my life has radically changed is an understatement. Through it all, I have many friends and family I love and cherish. Sarah has distinguished herself differently in this way. In the course of getting to know her, I started sharing the progressing state of my health.
Sarah's in prison or in jail and has nothing better to do. Sarah's trying to make as many contacts on the other side as she can. Sarah has ulterior motives, my friend.
Lightning has struck her.
Sarah absolutely would give you her kidney if it meant her getting out of prison, for sure.
The moment Sarah had learned the depth of my struggles health-wise, she straight up offered strenuously to donate a kidney to me. I got to tell you this. I hope she's not mad for me showing this, but she had no hesitation, no concern over personal risk or personal gain. I want to convey to this out and around the world that is merely offering is a good and heroic act. I've had many friends. I've not had one outside of my brother who was
private. Sarah will be like, "Oh no, I wasn't mad at you for sharing that. I completely understand. I can hear it. I can hear it."
Offered me a kidney. That is huge. I don't have anything of equal value to give to her. And that's not the actions of a narcissist. She did it as a reflex action, as a good person. After the verdict came in October, we spoke that night. And I hope Sarah doesn't get mad at me again for disclosing this, but out of all the shock and seriousness of what had happened in the court, the thing that made her emotionally break was that she realized she could no longer be a donor to me. I mean, I was sitting there like, hey, it's going to be okay. But she was so broken up, she couldn't help me.
So
that's a friend.
Then it turned where you had to comfort poor little Sarah Boone because she couldn't help you. Is that what happened? Is that what you're trying to tell us? That Sarah Boone turned the tables on you? Okay.
She is not, nor does she come up anywhere remotely close to being a narcissist.
That's the definition of narcissist.
And one more thing before I go. Social media has worked to rip the blindfold off of Lady Justice, to take the sword out of her right hand and start assassinating Sarah's character. However, the scales are the balance. As it says in Psalm 85, mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Justice isn't justice without mercy. Our pursuit of righteousness isn't complete and right without peace. Thank you, Your Honor, for the honor of speaking for my friend Sarah Boone. I hope that your justice is mixed with mercy here today. Thank you.
Oh, he was about to unleash some justice.
Any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Any follow-up,
Definitely
Mr.
about
Owens?
to unleash some justice.
No, Judge.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Albert. I appreciate you.
Like to call Dr. Harper? You want her on the stand or?
I'm okay with her on the stand.
On the stand?
No, she can be right now. Yes, sir. Be right now. Yes, sir.
And this must be the next person that they called because I think they only had the pen pal and this. I know Sarah's family, her mother and dad have passed away, but I think she's got a sibling. He didn't come and talk.
Doctor, good afternoon.
No?
If you could please raise your right hand. Madam Clerk's going to go ahead and swear you in.
Her son didn't want to say anything?
If you could, Doctor, state and spell your name for the record for us, please.
Dr. Julie Harper, Julieharper.
All right, thank you. Counselor, you may inquire.
And Dr. Harper, we all know we were here
a few weeks back for the trial and your testimony. So the judge knows quite a bit about your testimony. But if you could, I know that you prepared a report and we have submitted that to the court, which the court has read and the state has a copy. And I don't know if you want to refer to that or just speak on your own about Sarah Boone and what you did to assess her, and then any opinions that you want to express.
All right. I think that during trial testimony, I reviewed all of the documents, excuse me, and all of the records that were available. They're documented in my report as well. In addition to the forensic clinical interviews that I conducted, I also have had the opportunity to talk to her brother, Philip Paulson, in the interim since the trial, and I included his information in my report as to her family background.
If you could give the court a synopsis of what your findings are, and what you uncovered maybe from the brother, or whatever you think the court needs to hear as relevant material to his decision.
So referring to the summary section of my report, I'll keep it a brief, but I'll outline the highlights that I feel like haven't been conveyed before, which is an understanding of Ms. Boone's early family life, in that she is the middle child of her parents' union, and that her parents did not have a happy marriage. They didn't provide an opportunity to have a good role model as to how to have a partnership together. Ms. Boone was born in close proximity to her youngest brother, 11 months apart.
We're going to go in and we're going to watch her statement in its entirety. I'm going to take myself off screen and I'm going to say goodbye now. So be sure to give this live a thumbs up. This is day 3 of Livemas. We're doing 25 days of lives leading up to Christmas. And then on New Year's Eve to New Year's Day, we will do a 24-hour live to wrap things up. But this is Sarah Boone, and this is her statement to the court. We do know that the judge then proceeded to give her life in prison. We kicked off the live with that bombshell. So, and by now you all know she got life. So here's Sarah Boone. Be sure to give this live a thumbs up if nobody's told you this today. And even if they have, I love you guys so much. And I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
For the record, just state your name again.
Sarah Boone.
All right. Now, this is unlike a trial, so you're allowed to speak in a narrative form, as well as I understand you have taken some notes or written a letter that you want to read from, and then you want to speak to the court after that?
Yes.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and get started?
This is actually an edited version of. I had a lot to say. I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I didn't really know how to put it on paper. And I didn't know how much I could say or how little I should say. So what I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, I have, this is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
You may proceed, ma'am.
Kentu Sukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is a part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintu Sukuroi. In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by George Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se. Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable. Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived through to be so gold, but an act of grace, humility, and considerable self-compassion to be set free from sorrow. Withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance and adds even greater grief and deeper heartache, irreparable cracks on top of the already that no one deserves, no matter the pain or disappointment, untruths or injustice. It doesn't matter, as the more broken you are, even though now different than before, you've become more outstanding and more extraordinary. Above all, when you let go of blame, misunderstandings, excuses, give up your anger and cease from resentment, this is forgiven. And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with George Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, raped, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over, for breaking or removing the locks from all of the doors and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me bloody on his bed. For terrorizing and threatening my blind and deaf dogs by leaving the gate open I built to keep them safe, telling me he hoped I'd find their bloated dead body in the pond or scrape the remains off of the pavement, for kicking them off of the bed and throwing across the room because they were trying to protect me, for threatening to make me unrecognizable to my son by breaking all of the bones in my face, like his brother Moses did to him after he kept seeing all of the bruises from George beating me, like all of the times their father beat their mother, for all of the drunken rages and fist fights with so many neighbors when wandering into their apartments during hunting expeditions after I had escaped, for drowning me in liquor and wine because I didn't want to drink, causing me to urinate on myself, then butting the end of the bottle in my face, giving me 2 black eyes and a bloody nose, for making me experience what it is to be sodomized, threatening to kill my friends and the neighbors when they checked on me to make sure I was alive and in one piece, for threatening to burn down our townhome and set my car on fire because I got a job, for holding me hostage on weekends my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table as a warning not to ask anything or try to leave, for stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested, for destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called, for me experiencing ever being arrested and after today, prison, for beating me almost blind, crushing my occipital lobe, for having me experience what it means to see stars like in the cartoons where a character has a tall lump on their head. I had that too, and many times, for dragging me downstairs by my hair in the middle of the night just to sit next to him, for taking my car driving drunk with my debit card to buy more alcohol while I slept, even after I kindly explained the importance of my car to take my son to school foremost, me to work, and he to his batterers intervention classes and probation officer meetings, where I would be forced to sit for hours in the parking lot waiting for him. For causing me so much trauma and pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once. For destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer scarlet letter, not letting me feel safe to live, talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships, simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his terrifying love. I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives and daughters, all for knowing who George was, capable of, and has done in the past, his history of violence and where he learned it, then to keep turning a blind eye when I would ask for help. All of his siblings, including Pharrell Torres, who is now on his way to prison for stabbing the mother of their baby in the side of her head. For everyone who knew what George was doing to me, sometimes how and when, but allowed and enabled. I forgive them for caring too late.
All right, Josh Schiffer, I want to bring you in and just ask you quickly before we have to go to a break. I am shocked that this is what she's saying, and forgiving George Torres for all the horrible things that she alleges he did, forgiving his family for knowing what he was capable of, turning a blind eye. This is not what I expected, Josh.
But is this forgiveness or is this just a screed? This is unhinged, bluntly. Like this shuts down a judge. Just absolutely shuts him down.
That's what I think too. All right, stand by, Jack. We're going to get back to you next block. We need to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to hear more of what Sarah Boone has to say to the court.
We're looking at the lives of 2 young.
Hearing from Sarah Boone herself. We hit the pause button. Let's go back in to hear more of what she says.
I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the times Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate, conjured and fabricated by the organized crime that is social media, which condemned me in the court of global public opinion since the beginning. My family law case is the new prey waiting to be picked apart and pillaged from me being made infamous by social media in my criminal case. It simply seems I cannot forgive and be forgiven and move forward. Social media has made me a pariah. It has caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially by broadcasting and manipulating my cases online. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned. I forgive them. Also, all of the media tycoons for not having a life of their own, trying so desperately to make themselves seem so right by making me appear so wrong. Forgiveness for prejudgment, ridiculous theatrics, lies, making and taking blood money from my and others' misfortunes, accidents, and catastrophes. It's all over their hands and their keyboards. And even after all that's been said and done, theorized, hypothesized, scrutinized, and blasphemed in my case, still no one knows me. In the end, I forgive myself for not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken, stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, for being hopeless, desperate, simple-minded, weak, and inexperienced. I forgive myself for not realizing I was enduring a life of domestic violence and that the vicious cycle of never ends. I had nothing to compare to. I've never been hit by a man ever before in my life. I was raised hitting a woman was wrong and should never happen. No excuse. I forgive myself for not escaping permanently, for not fighting back sooner to save myself, my son, my dogs, home, and car. Having 20/20 hindsight, thinking of everything I could have done differently or better to avoid the outcome. I think about this every day since. Also, of all the good days we had together, for him at least, while I was constantly in hyperdrive, high alert, and paranoid, making sure I did everything right all the time. If not, the great possibility I would be ended as George threatened me with so many times before. I forgive myself for falling in love with a monster, and no matter how grotesque he may become, I still loved him, hoped, and forgave. I tried breaking the spell so he wouldn't be a monster anymore. I saw who he was inside. George made me then, now, and always love him for all of his cracks also. We made each other our own brilliant pieces of art from the cracks and repairs. Unfortunately, not all cracks can be. In all of my forgiveness, George is my greatest lesson and will forever be a part of me. I think of him every day and still speak to him when alone on the rec yard. I ask his forgiveness and that he looks for me at the gates of heaven so I can tell him how sorry I am endlessly and that I never stopped loving him. In all of it and still. When I first came to jail, I put my mat under my bed and cried all day and all night for months, only falling asleep from being so exhausted with grief. I wrote him letters. I wrote his family and his daughters, apologizing for asking for their forgiveness. But due to fear that my life or sons would be jeopardized, I did not send. I am sorry. I cannot begin to fathom any of their grief and sadness. Please forgive me. Almost everything reminds me of him, seeing my stab wound especially every day especially. It truly reminds me that all I really did live through. George haunts me. He is everywhere. I believe because I do still love him, think of him, and miss his laugh the most. In my heart, I know he is with me and understands that this tragedy was not intentional. I hope everyone can, his family foremost. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please wholeheartedly know that, and always, I would never. Forgive me, George. Forgive me, Torres family. Forgive me, Judge Cranick. To the entire planet, please forgive me. I graciously and humbly ask for consideration, for forgiveness to be extended instead of judgment, for reconciliation and restoration for all of us to move forward. My apology is profuse and ceaseless. Allow me, please, to brush off the muck, wipe the blood off of my face, and fix the cuts in my skin. I ask for understanding in what really happened and for how long. For second chances, repentance, and redemption to advocate for all domestic violence survivors, to help them overcome, heal, and still hope, always, to make their voices heard, to confidently walk with all of their scars on the outside and the inside, to help them not ever become a casualty of domestic violence as so many others, to stop the abuse and maltreatment before it's too late. There is always hope, and you can survive. In my soft-spoken conclusion, I ask this: would I be the darling mother, celebrated woman of the year, if it were I who died? How many daughters, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces, and friends have been because they did? I am a survivor. Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke oppressors, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 1:17, all-encompassing, protect the abused.
Wow, let's bring back in criminal defense attorneys Jack Rice and Josh Schiffer. Jack, let me start with you this time. Asking forgiveness, or rather granting forgiveness to George, the Torres family, social media, the media tycoons, and herself, and asking for George's forgiveness. What do you think of all this?
In a soft-spoken conclusion was her words. Actually, if you look up narcissism in the dictionary, you're going to see her picture. I mean, this is extraordinary. If there is such a thing as doubling down, this is it. If you think about what it is that a defendant, a convicted criminal, a convicted murderer needs to do at sentencing, this ain't it. This is exactly how what you do is you light this person up and say, this is how you get life. This is the person who never sees the outside of the jail cell, because after you do it, after you're convicted of it, the response is, I'm really sorry for myself, and it was George's fault, and it was the corrupt police department's fault, and it was the social media's fault, and it was every lawyer's fault, and it was the corrupt system's fault and the judge's fault, but it wasn't my fault. This is how you go to prison for life.
And she even says with that, Jack and Josh, still, no one knows me. In spite of all of this, no one knows me. Josh, your final thoughts as we are going to take a break.
Absolute disaster, and the thoughts aren't going to end. This is, like Jack said, this is begging for the judge to swing hard. When we do sentencing issues, and you got to look at what the court's role is. Decision done. You're convicted. You need to approach the person who holds your future in their hand, standing up and proving your point that no one understands. No. This explains all the lawyers.
Yeah, we're going to.
The court has had the opportunity to review the evidence and testimony that was presented at trial. The victim impact statements presented here today, the statements of character witnesses, both orally and in writing, Dr. Harper's report and testimony, the defendant's testimony, pre-sentencing investigation, the arguments of the state and the arguments of the defense. Court pronounces sentence as follows. Ms. Boone, court sentences you to life in the Department of Corrections with credit time served that Madam Clerk will provide to you momentarily. There are also court costs and costs of prosecution, which Madam Clerk will give you the totals of momentarily. Due to the court levying a life sentence, the court is inclined to liquidate those to a civil judgment unless I hear opposition from the state.
No opposition, Your Honor.
All right. Madam Clerk, if you could please give us the credit time served and the court costs, please.
4 years, 9 months, and 8 days, and the court costs are $418, a state prosecution fee of $100, a jerk fee of $50, and a PD. Oh, excuse me, you're not screwed.
I'm right.
So the total would be $618.
All right, ma'am, the court costs and costs of prosecution are $618. Those will be liquidated to a civil judgment. You will be given credit time served of 4 years, 9 months, and 8 days. You will have 30 days from today to appeal the judgment and sentence in writing. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you. I'm going to have the courtroom deputy provide you the paperwork. Because you've been incarcerated for the last 58 some odd months, the court is going to declare that you are indigent in this matter. I cannot appoint the public defender to represent you as they are conflicted out. Similarly, I cannot appoint the regional conflict counsel to represent you for the same reasons. The clerk will appoint an attorney from the conflict wheel who specializes in appellate litigation. And again, you'll have 30 days from today to appeal that judgment and sentence in writing. Do you have any questions for me? You will now be remanded into the custody of the Orange County Jail to transfer you to the Department of Corrections, and I wish you the best of luck. State, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything further? All right. Thank you all very much. Court's off the record.
It's not that one. It's not the same one.
She's on her way. Okay. Can you go give me a heads up on the carrier?
Yeah,
I gotta come see her real quick. Oh, sorry.
Is this it? That one? No. It's the wrong one. Just hold on. I'll get you the sign. I'll have There's a special identity for review. This is the one. Is this the one for? My board, is this the one for the fee?
Yeah.
Yeah. She signed it in for you.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, we'll file it, and then you already ordered to appoint another attorney.
Okay.
I can do the.
Yeah, look at you on the.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the information. Yes, I do.
I mean, if her cousin's gonna go, then she can that.
What about Gary?
Angel flew down to a tiny house on the edge of hell. Ain't no garage or a swimming pool, just a sad old friend who thinks he's cool. Angel knocks twice. She says, let me in.